Gunmen opened fire at a bar in Thousand Oaks in California in the United States, killing 12 people, including a police officer. Now, multiple people are also injured in the shooting incident. The extent of their injuries is not known at this moment. The unidentified gunman is said to have opened fire at the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, which is part of the greater Los Angeles area in California. At least 200 people were inside the bar when the gunman opened fire. SWAT officers were seen trying to secure the area, and paramedics were giving CPR to first aid to victims outside the bar. Now, when officers first responded, they reported there was an additional gunfire and said approximately 30 rounds had been fired. The gunman was shot dead as well inside the bar, but he is yet to be identified.
We have not identified the suspect yet. Our partners from the FBI were on scene almost immediately to help us with identification process and with crime scene processing. We have no idea if there is a terrorism link to this event or not. It would be a total guess. It's a horrific scene in there. There is blood everywhere, and the suspect is part of that. And I didn't want to get that close and disturb the scene and possibly jeopardize the investigation.
He had 2 rounds that I know with him. He changed them within about 6 seconds, which was really fast. So he knew what he was doing. And he also had perfect form. When I look back, he was like spot on.
All right, and joining us to talk a little bit more about this latest shooting in the United States is Mary McCarthy, who joins us from Los Angeles. And Mary, what is the latest that you're picking up on the investigation? We know that so far the gunman has remained unidentified.
That's right. It's very much a developing story. It's exactly 5 hours since violence broke out, 11:20 p.m. on a Wednesday night. A busy night for college students who were gathered, many of them at this bar, the Borderline Bar and Grill, not too far from Pepperdine University. Tragically, 12 of them, they were killed when the gunman came in and opened fire. At this point, we do not know the name of the gunman. We do not know what his motive was. As you heard there, it sounded like he knew what he was doing as a shooter. We have some reports from witnesses saying that prior to opening fire, he threw smoke bombs into the bar, but that hasn't been confirmed. But that would indicate certainly a certain amount of premeditation. At this point, though, the investigation has just begun. All that we know about the gunman is that he too is dead.
Right. And Mary, then very briefly then, of course, at this moment, are the investigations looking into a terror angle at all in this? We know there have been several, mass shootings in America, not all, of course, linked to terror.
At this point, we know that the FBI has been called in to respond, in addition, of course, to the local law enforcement. But that is not an indication that this is considered terrorism or might be considered terrorism. That would be standard when we have a mass outbreak of violence like this. We'll know in the coming hours. We should know more anyway, whether this is purely domestic or has anything else linked to it. At this point, absolutely no sign that it's terror related.
Right, Mary McCarthy, thanks very much for joining us with those updates from Los Angeles. Thanks indeed. Well, staying with news from the United States, in trademark Trump style, another high-profile exit from his administration. On Wednesday, Jeff Sessions, a Trump appointee and the Attorney General, was asked to resign by the president himself a day after the midterm elections. Now, Jeff Sessions' Chief of Staff, Matthew Whitaker, will take over as the acting Attorney General. Sessions, a former U.S. Senator from Alabama, was an early and loyal supporter of Trump, who drew his fury when he recused himself from a probe into the Russian meddling into the 2016 U.S. election campaign. Sessions, in a letter, said that he was stepping down at Trump's request. Now, President Trump, in a tweet, also said that he was grateful to Jeff Sessions for his service. Sessions' ouster was criticized by Democrats and observers who said that the Republicans were attempting to obstruct the Russian meddling probe into the Trump administration.
I find the timing very suspect, number one. But number two, our paramount view is that any attorney general, whether this one or another one, should not be able to interfere with the Mueller investigation in any.
And Sessions' exit and a stronger Senate presence of the Trump administration leave the Robert Mueller investigation into the Russian election meddling on dangerous ground. It's the latest in a series of steps, starting with the firing of James Comey, of course, last year, to undermine the investigation. And, of course, Trump has repeatedly demanded loyalty from his own appointees. Ray Locker, senior journalist from Washington, is now joining us for more on Jeff Sessions' exit. And Ray Locker, thanks for talking to us. So what does this really mean for the Trump administration? Of course, as we've been speaking about Robert Mueller's investigation as well.
Well, for the administration, it means he needs to appoint a new attorney general, and there are a lot of questions about who that might be. While the Republicans gained seats in the Senate on Tuesday night, which makes it easier for them to confirm a nominee, it's doubtful that there are many high-profile people who are very talented who would want to take this job. Sessions, in a lot of ways, is considered by Democrats to have been a disaster as attorney general, other than recusing himself to let the Mueller probe go through. So we don't know who the next appointment would be. Matt Whitaker, the chief of staff, has already criticized the Mueller probe. He's been outspoken as a critic of a number of things. So there's immediate skepticism about his effectiveness in the job, now that he's the acting attorney general.
Right, and the acting attorney general, as you said, has been more pro-Trump when it comes to the Mueller investigation than, of course, Jeff Sessions as well as his deputy. Would he then be able to supersede? Is there a precedent to that? And, of course, Donald Trump continues to demand any and all kinds of loyalty from his appointees. And the only other option for people who don't toe the line is an exit. So, as somebody who follows U.S. policies and, the presidents over years, is this an unprecedented situation? The CNN website showing that about 60 people have already left this administration.
The turnover in this administration is unprecedented. All administrations have turnover because it's hard to work for the White House. It's just a very demanding job. But this administration, far and beyond any other one, has had a lot of turnover. 2 chiefs of staff, now an attorney general, the EPA administrator, Secretary of Health and Human Services, you name it, the list goes on and on. And so this does not bode well for the future, I think, in terms of the effectiveness of the administration, in terms of getting good people. Matt Whitaker is kind of a blank slate, other than what we know about him as a pro-Trump supporter. So, it's going to be tough going ahead, that's for sure.
Right. And Ray Locker, of course, to many outside the United States, who really won the midterm elections? Because the House of Representatives, in a sense, has gone to the Democrats. The Senate, the Republicans have done better. And the press conference where, of course, Donald Trump sort of lashed out on certain journalists seemed like either he was very angry or he seemed more robust after the midterm elections.
I think on balance, it was a better night for Democrats than Republicans. They recaptured the House of Representatives, which was tough because so many of those districts had been drawn in a way specifically to help Republicans, not Democrats. And they picked up at least 7 governors' mansions around the country. So that's significant. The Republicans did do well in the Senate. They gained seats. Part of that is because Democrats had way more seats to defend than Republicans. But the Democrats did have at one time a hope of recapturing the Senate, and those hopes were dashed. So I think on balance, better night for Democrats, but there are plenty of places where Republicans can say that they did very well as also. Right,
Ray Locker, appreciate you talking to us this morning. Thanks very much indeed, joining us from Washington. Thank you. Well, staying with news about President Trump, he, of course, as Ray Locker was saying, had a major spat with a reporter who questioned him about the migrant caravan at a post-midterm election press briefing. The story has, of course, snowballed into a major controversy. But before we go more into what the controversy is all about, listen into this exchange.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms. That
here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this
No,
election
not
to
at
try
all.
to keep?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
That's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual. You know, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President. If I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either. So
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly said
you aren't the best,
Mr. President. You repeatedly over the course.
Okay, just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
I'm joined by Anas Malik from Islamabad for the very latest on Asia Bibi and her fate. And Anas, what more are you hearing from the Pakistani Foreign Office? What has been decided?
Well, the Pakistani Foreign Office was very unclear as to what is the fate of Asia Bibi. Dr. Mohammad Faisal was quick to say that she is a free citizen. Again, in the same sentence, he was saying that she can leave Pakistan once her petitions, the ongoing petitions, are settled. Now, a very technical point here is that those petitions that have been filed have not been fixed a date has not been fixed for hearing. So, technically, she still remains a free citizen. She was released from the Multan jail late last night. What we understand is that a European country's special envoy was assisting her as well, all the way from her journey to Multan, from Multan to Islamabad. Just a moments back, government sources told WION that she's been reunited with the family as well. Around 8 a.m., the family of Asia Bibi met Asia for the first time after an agonizing wait of about 5.5 years. 2014 for the first time was the last time when she was sentenced by the Lahore High Court, and then after that she had been in solitary confinement. Seldom would the family be allowed to visit her. Around 8 a.m. the family was reunited, and now Asia Bibi's children and her husband is with her. She's in Pakistan. That's what the government sources are maintaining, at a safe location owing to her security concerns. What we understand is that there are efforts underway from the diplomatic community here in Islamabad to fly her out of Pakistan at the earliest. Yes, baby.
Right. All right, Anas, thanks very much indeed for joining us with the latest there. News about the pollution levels in Delhi from being, of course, they've turned toxic in the last couple of days, and pollution levels today were severe a day after Diwali, and in fact there was smog all of this morning. The air quality plunged to hazardous levels, with some areas recording a 999 air quality index. According to officials, Delhi recorded the worst air quality of the year this morning. The air quality slipped drastically after residents of India's Delhi NCR region continued to burst crackers long after the deadline set by the Supreme Court. The Diwali evening water sprinklers were brought in this morning to check the rising pollution levels in the national capital. As of 4 p.m. this evening, the average air quality index of Delhi stood at 390. The air quality of other satellite cities in the region was even worse. For Noida, it was 432. Faridabad recorded an air quality of 455. Remember, when it comes to air quality index, anything above 300 is considered very poor and hazardous, and a hazardous air quality level signify a state of emergency. Also, almost everyone breathing this air is likely to be affected.
We are near the Patparganj area of New Delhi, and here the pollution levels have reached around 999 ppm. It implies that even the machines are not able to record the higher level of pollutions, and the pollution level has crossed all the levels. Here behind me is the temple, which is just 50 to 60 meters away from us, but the visibility is so less that to see the entire temple is a problem. Here the entire area is covered with thick smog, and the reason behind it is the increased pollution level. Yesterday it was Diwali, and the Supreme Court of India came up with the order to burst firecrackers between 8 till 10 p.m. However, many people did not really follow the orders, and this is the reason today the pollution levels have increased in all the areas of New Delhi, especially in eastern Delhi where we are near the Patparganj. The pollution levels are so high that doctors have said that people should not be really coming out, because for children, for elderly, and even for the healthy people, this is not a good moment for their lungs. With video journalist Sujoy in New Delhi, Nagen Singh for WION, World is One.
And this situation is not unprecedented. Every year, the air quality in Delhi dips drastically following Diwali celebrations, as toxic smog often lingers for days owing to the low wind speed. Last month, the Indian Supreme Court had set a 2-hour window for bursting crackers on Wednesday. This time, the time frame was 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and it was grievously violated. Meanwhile, the Delhi police said that legal action would be taken against all those who violated the Supreme Court order. But while far away from the toxic air of Delhi, the European countries have been taking a number of steps to curb pollution. WION Sumit Chaturvedi is in Milan and sent us this report.
The cities of Milan and Turin in northern Italy faced one of the worst possible pollution situation last December, and they handled it by banning the plying of petrol and diesel cars in many parts of the cities. In fact, in these parts of Milan, only Euro 5 cars were allowed. Europe has become conscious about the ill effects of pollution, especially after the Volkswagen scandal broke in 2015. Now, analysts say that by cutting down on pollution, Europe can save $700 billion by 2025. In fact, cities across Europe are taking many measures so that pollution can be brought down. Berlin itself has cut down pollution levels by stopping use of petrol and diesel cars in many areas across city. City of Paris will only allow electric cars in certain areas by 2030 only. So clearly, a lot is at stake in Europe, and they now know about it. This is Sumit Chaturvedi signing off from Milan for WION. World is One.